This is the YoloCam S3, which is an AI-powered 4K live streaming camera, which is just a fancy way of naming a webcam. But I do have high hopes for this webcam because it has a large 1/1.3-inch sensor, which should make it look more like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. In fact, people are calling this the new king of webcams. But the question is, does the YoloCam S3 live up to the hype? There's only one way to find out. Let the unboxing begin. Is what I typically say, except the webcam is already right here. We're using it right now. This is the YoloCam S3. Cue the unboxing sequence. Quick disclaimer, YoloCam did send me the S3 for review, but everything I say in this video are my thoughts only. There are no drafts and no previews. I'm just saying whatever I want to say. All right, let's see what's in the box. Type-C to Type-A cable with a Type-C adapter. Manual and a card. Oh wow, the build quality is something else. It is all metal. Not exaggerating, this is the most premium webcam that I have ever held. And you can see it mentions the 1/1.3-inch sensor. This is the stand. Hello, it's Future Dave here, and I've been using the YoloCam S3 for a month now, and it has been incredible. I made this video about why I chose freelancing and why you might want to consider it. And that was not a video that I planned. That was something I recorded when I got back home from a long, tiring day, and as I was about to record my voiceovers, I had a moment of inspiration. And as I was looking around me, I saw that I had my Stream Deck set up, I had OBS on, I had my lights turned on, and the YoloCam S3 was already plugged in. So all I had to do to record was literally press a button. And when I saw the quality, I was like, you know what? I think I can actually upload this onto YouTube. You see, this is the only webcam that I have used so far that I will gladly use for YouTube videos. And let me show you why. Let me switch to my Sony. It's right here. Right there, yeah, it's kind of blocking the frame. If we're talking about dynamic range, normally the brighter parts of the scene, like a side of my face or where the studio pin lights are, those usually turn into completely white balls with smaller sensor cameras. Yeah, switching back to my Sony, you can see this region over here. It is becoming white, but there is still some detail. Now, if I were to point the webcam onto that white acoustic panel, it's keeping all of that detail. Back on the S3, if you have a look at the shadows, with smaller sensor webcams, this shaded part of my hair usually dissolves into black, but you can still actually see the actual strands of hair, just like my Sony. And if we're talking about raw sharpness, you can easily see the details and fibers of my shirt. Well, they're slightly blurry right now because I have sharpness dropped to -7. The current look is my own custom preset, by the way. Let me raise sharpness to 0. So at the 0 point, you definitely see more detail. And now I've raised sharpness to 10, and now the image is so sharp that you can count the strands of hair on my head. Let's bring it back down to -7. Even with sharpness -7, you can count my chin hairs. The 4K really helps. Now, in case you were wondering, this is what 4K 60 FPS looks like. Super buttery smooth. I can move around. You can see the fluidity of the entire frame. And you can also see this massive crop. I think they're doing that to make sure that the sensor doesn't overheat. I also had to raise my shutter speed so that the frames aren't choppy. But yeah, that crop can actually be very advantageous, especially if you like this kind of talking head framing where you don't need a whole lot of information around you. Okay, now we're back in 4K 30 FPS. Now, when we're thinking of professional cameras that are good enough for YouTube, there's usually this quality or characteristic that we're looking for, and that is bokeh, or background blur. The YoloCam S3 has a lot of bokeh, largely because of its 1/1.3-inch sensor. It also has a large aperture of f1.85, which is like buying a specialized prime lens for your mirrorless camera. And it also has this wide 24mm field of view, which is wide enough to get most of the scene, but zoomed in enough to add a bit of background blur, which tells me that if YoloCam really wanted to, they could just switch the lens and make the background even blurrier. This Sony of mine has some great bokeh as well. You can see it over there. I would say in similar amounts to the YoloCam, but this is using a wider lens, which reduces bokeh. Now, I'm happy to report that I'm not seeing any chromatic aberration here, and not a whole lot of noticeable chromatic aberration. Cheaper webcams tend to make the grill on this microphone purple. But for the YoloCam, that does not seem to be the case, which means it's got great optics. Now, is the S3 a tracking webcam? It isn't. But that's okay, because what I've noticed is that tracking usually adds like $30 to a webcam's price. Now, in terms of autofocus, it isn't the snappiest. Whoop. Try that again. Takes a bit of time. But that is normal. It is performing kind of like a mirrorless camera. You see, the more bokeh or background blur that you have, the thinner the plane of focus, which means that if it shifts focus from me to a distant object, it is going to do more work. See, if it's close, autofocus is pretty fast because the focus is on me. But if I put this in front of me, it has to move all the way over here. That's actually respectable. Now, the minimum focusing distance is about 3 to 4 inches. Take a look at this. The S3 is not focusing because this SD card is too close. I'm moving it back, moving it back, moving it back, 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 back again. There we go. Oh. Here, this is as close as it can go, or it gets blurry. Alright, and as for their software, YoloLiv Compose, I love it because it has an essentialist philosophy. You only have things that you actually need. So here you can change the frame rate, you can switch between horizontal and vertical if you want to, and when you do that, I can like turn the webcam to its side magnetically, like so, and that was so easy. Gonna switch back right there. You have image versions, which apparently you can select this fair complexion or light color. Looks pretty good. Again, you can adjust the sharpness. Let me show you all the default settings here. Everything's set to 50. This is how it originally looked. And you can really see that this webcam has a lot of dynamic range. I personally don't like an overly contrasty look, so 42, 45, that range is okay for me. This here is the dynamic range slider, which is one of my favorites. What it does is if you have highlights, you're able to bring out those highlights without them looking washed out. Conversely, if you want darker shadows, you are able to bring them out while maintaining detail. I like this set over here. There's actually this option for lens shading correction. And what that does is that it gets rid of the vignette around you because the lens has some natural imperfections, so it has darker sides. So this actually looks very natural when you turn it off. I prefer to keep it off, but I do like the DR slider all the way left. Of course, you got types of autofocus. You can focus on a single point if you want, or focus on your face. And the great thing about the S3 being a large sensor 4K camera is you can zoom in, like so, digitally without any obvious quality loss. So maybe if you go deeper here, oh wow. I do not like that. All the way in. Still no perceivable quality loss. Usually anything zoomed in that much would look very pixelated, but no, not on the YoloCam S3. Again, I'm not being paid to say all of this. Also has this interesting AI parameter feature. Let's click start. Let's do that. It's doing some stuff here. Gotta stay stationary. Okay, and now I can pick a look. And let's say I prefer this one in terms of brightness, and then pick something based on style. These all look somewhat similar, yet slightly different. Okay, this is a cool look. Not sure I would use this, but it's a great look at the potential. Hopefully they improve this feature in the future. And of course, you got a white balance setting over here. You got auto, you got manual. If you want to keep things simple, just select auto and auto lock. That way the white balance isn't constantly changing. And apparently it has these scenes. These seem to be templates that try to replicate a certain look. Think color profiles. So that's the software, and I was really excited to talk about the microphones in the YoloCam S3 until I realized it doesn't have any. I literally cannot see anything, not even a tiny hole that resembles a microphone. I also checked the review guide, looked for the word microphone, did not find it, which is fantastic because the cost that would have gone into subpar microphones went into webcam parts so it can do its job better and keep costs lower. Because most people using a webcam like this will be using microphones like this. And in terms of stuttering, happy to report that I have not experienced stuttering, at least in a way that it's the webcam's fault. Now, in terms of thermals, the S3 gets warm, but has never overheated on me, even when using it in 4K 30 FPS for hours. The all-metal chassis really helps with heat dissipation. I mean, YoloCam even has a 24/7 non-stop live streaming guarantee with no overheating guaranteed. And I have tested this. I literally connected it to my Mac Mini, left it on for 24 hours, and it did not crash. Fantastic video, fantastic stability. It is a solid block of aluminum with a unibody design, which does feel very premium compared to all the plastic webcams I've reviewed. Now, in terms of low light, I am just going to turn this off, and this. All I have now is a monitor, and it can still capture all the details of my face. Let me try increasing the ISO, like so. Wow. Where is the noise? There's a tiny bit of noise. It takes a while before the noise shows up. Okay, so it's beginning to push the autofocus ever so slightly. It is beginning to hunt for me, but if I set autofocus to face, okay, it is set to face. I mean, it's still hunting, but this is perfectly acceptable performance for a webcam this small. Now let's assume that I just have a torch here, and that fixes everything. So if you're in a dark room and all you have is a tiny light, you can kind of get away with it. Phenomenal low light performance. Again, this is a webcam. Now, in terms of price to performance, goodness gracious, this is the webcam that creators have been waiting for. Gone are the days where you've had to spend a minimum of $500 on a used mirrorless camera, which has great image quality but overheats a lot because it's not designed for streaming. And here you have a $200, sub $200 webcam with mirrorless level quality. This is a proper studio camera. At roughly $200, you are getting about $500 in value. At this price, you cannot be beat. So you would typically go from cheap $20, $40 webcam to $600 mirrorless camera, but now we have a proper middle ground that image quality wise, I'd say is closer to the higher end than the lower end. It's like medium high quality. Don't get me wrong, I still love my Sonys, but for a whole lot of my meetings where I usually switch to my Sony as a webcam, I can now reserve them for dedicated YouTube videos and use the YoloCam S3 as my dedicated meeting camera. And it can also be my casual YouTube camera. So do I recommend the YoloCam S3? If it isn't obvious, absolutely. This webcam is a no-brainer. So if you want to get yours, make sure to check out the link down below. And I just want to say thank you to these incredible people. Thank you, and I'll see you in this video.